Welcome back. Today I will be reviewing a book called The Image by Daniel Boorstin. And I forgot one of the main parts why I was so drawn to reading this. A guide to pseudo-events in America. So I was immediately captured by wanting to think about and talk about imagery and how much that actually is like forming us as humans at this point. And also pseudo-events. What is a pseudo-event? You might ask. I'm gonna go over that a little bit. I spent my entire late teens, entire 20s, and the first 2 years of my 30s desperately trying to get in touch with or build or find my worth. And most of that time was spent working on my self-image, trying to if I didn't have it coming naturally, then how do I build this for myself or create this or grow this for myself? Which is a fool's errand because you're just doing all of this stuff on your own without the help from what made you. And you're chasing things that are empty. Images are actually empty. That can really, once you realize that can really make you stop and be like, okay, what am I actually trying to do? What am I chasing? He makes a really good point in this book that, before we were just flooded by imagery all the time, we used to aspire towards ideals. That was kind of this active thing that we would be constantly working toward, and it was just very meaningful. Now we just try to mold ourselves into an image and then play a role. And those are very different things. And I also think, because I experienced this firsthand, that the more you try to fit yourself into that mold, that image, create that image for yourself, the more not only you have to maintain it and be so paranoid of losing that image. God forbid you're a human and you're not this perfect thing. You're actually a sinner. But I think it also might take you away from who you really are, your true nature, not as you think you are, but who you were created to be. And that was one of the reasons that I left Hollywood. I didn't realize it at the time, but pretty much the entire time, right? From when I began and I was aspiring to be an actress and I was doing some modeling and I was doing all these things, I think deep down, somewhere in my core, I knew that I did not want to spend my life creating an image and then having to maintain that and cater to a system of power where you don't really get to be who you authentically are all the time. You have to do the things that need to be done to be a public figure, create an illusion of something. So then that also brings us to pseudo-events. And he describes a pseudo-event as something that exists just so it can be reported on. And this will eventually tie into social engineering and Baudrillard the philosopher and simulation and simulacra, which was, there are birds just going crazy, squawking out there. Okay, where was I? Simulation, simulacra, which then is kind of what the Matrix, and we know how big that is culturally at this point. Red pill. Are you red pilled or blue pilled? Are you black pilled? Have you taken the orange pill? What do you just so many pills. It's I'm trying to take less pills in my life, This was written in 1961. And I really like going back and reading people who had some semblance of foresight as to maybe what the things that were happening then, how they were going to play out through time, given what we know about human nature. So this guy was a historian. He was the librarian of the United States Congress. He wrote a few different trilogies in this. Was he a CIA asset? I don't know. You know, sometimes when you go back and you read these people, you don't know if they were also just pummeling out propaganda or if they were genuinely just in touch with something and they got published. Anyway, so this kind of came before The Society of the Spectacle by Guy Debord. If you don't know these books, you should probably know them. The Society of Spectacle and Situationism, and the way that that influenced then The Simulation and Simulacra by Jean Baudrillard, are kind of important things to know in the sense of, well, if you want to be in touch with reality and some semblance of what you're working with, what's really going on. So if evil exists, if evil is real, which it would be hard to not believe that that's the case, don't you want to know what you're working against so you can equip yourself, prepare yourself to defend, protect, get organized and resist and kind of fight back, not in the way that activists do when they rage, but just in a way that is necessary for you to maintain your life. You know, because they can use shocks of various kinds and cognitive warfare is a thing, and they can use these shocks, and disaster capitalists will come in and then try to like usher humanity into a certain way, and you see it happening. You see the division. You're like, this is created. I don't think this is naturally this would be occurring if they weren't pummeling traumatic events at us through our screens all the time. Okay, let's get back to the book, shall we? I love that one of the quotes on the main front page, I'm not very organized, says, technology, the knack of so arranging the world that we don't have to experience it. Max Frisch. Which is a very real thing, the frictionless life. People just want to be cozy all the time. And listen, I get it. I love being cozy, but that's also just not life. This is a how not to do it book. It is about our arts of self-deception, how we hide reality from ourselves. Another fun thing was the Harper's review said, very informative, entertaining, and chastising book. And who doesn't love to be chastised while they read? Put me in my place, Mr. Borston, please. So he talks a lot, and this book is coming specifically a little bit from the perspective of Americans. And then he does comment on how then that impacts the rest of the world, given the hegemonic control that America has had and that we've now outsourced our Hollywood culture to the world. And it's been very powerful. And there are some very not great things about that. So he starts off with extravagant expectations. In this book, I describe the world of our making, how we have used our wealth, our literacy, our technology, and our progress to create the thicket of unreality which stands between us and the facts of life. Preach. We expect too much of the world. And I really agree. You know, it's one thing to have dreams and to be like, you know, have your aspirations, but people just like want it all. They want it all. And is that good? By harboring, nourishing, and ever enlarging our extravagant expectations, we create the demand for the illusions with which we deceive ourselves and which we pay others to deceive us. That's what's really crazy, is we've created jobs and entire industries that we pay to deceive us. Like how he says, to provide synthetic happenings, which have flooded our experience. So how much of what you think is going on has been produced and manufactured in order to change your behavior or to make you want or desire something? It's a good question to ask yourself. I get very, 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 very uncomfortable and disturbed and kind of angry at the thought of being manipulated and shaped by sinister forces. And I was for a long time. I took the bait. I took a bite of the apple. You know, I have an Apple iPhone. Okay, so the common prefix pseudo. Let's remind ourselves what pseudo, because we hear that a lot now, you know, pseudopsychology, comes from the Greek word meaning false or intended to deceive. The power to make a reportable event is thus the power to make experience. If you can produce something that makes people believe they're having an experience, that's sorcery. So here, haha, what did I write on my Post-it? I love Post-its. I love school supplies. Predictive programming. Think about Wag the Dog. The movie Wag the Dog. I mean, I don't know how you can watch the movie Wag the Dog, Capricorn 1, an old movie. It even has O.J. Simpson in there for you. I don't know how you can watch movies like that and then see something happen that ignites a mass emotional experience and a lot of shifting of reality. Yeah, I don't know how you can watch these movies and ever take anything seriously that comes through the screen again. You look at news people, you look at these, and I'm not even talking about mainstream and legacy media. I'm talking about even the alternative news, you know, the people who are truthers out there in the truth community. These people have millions of subscribers. They make a lot of money, and in my opinion, they are change agents, and they are very good at what they do with getting the public to trust them, like they're after the truth and that you're getting good information from them, when I think they're just the same. They're pushing out propaganda, they're seeding narratives, they're sowing division, and they're keeping people from actual reality and actual truth. So if you haven't seen Wag the Dog, you gotta go watch that movie. It's with Dustin Hoffman and Robert De Niro. And when I watched it, I think it's from like 97 or 98, it blew my mind. You just don't know what is true when it's coming through your screen. You know, and then you think of all the people addicted to news and they watch it on their, not even on CNN or Fox News, but now we get our news through social media. And it's literally called programming. And here's the thing, here's the kicker, okay? I mean, I have so much highlighted in this book, but there remains a tantalizing difference between man-made and God-made events. The modern issue is being able to tell the difference between the two, because it is very sophisticated what the producers of our current reality can do. And with artificial intelligence coming in, and like, it's just gonna get a little weird. And you know, maybe I had a little bit of a advantage because I was an actress, I was in Hollywood, I was on sets, so I could see the process. I saw behind the curtain of Oz. And if you haven't seen that, I get that it might be like, they wouldn't be able to stage that catastrophe. They wouldn't be able to do that. It's like, well, they totally would. They really, really would. They can do a lot of things. They're like 40 years ahead technologically than what the masses have. Like, they give us little bits of their advancements to play with, and then they're like, they can do some crazy things with mind control and what's on the, yeah, we're not gonna get into that right now. He also brought up, because we hear about all of these revolutions, right? The Industrial Revolution, the Sexual Revolution, now we're in the middle of a technological revolution. But he brought up the Graphic Revolution, which was, you know, the printing press and being able to disseminate information to the masses was huge. But that was also just words and reading. So if you couldn't read, you weren't included, you weren't involved in that. But imagery, you don't have to be able to read You just see it and it immediately starts like interacting with you. And, you know, think about living at a time where you just didn't really see that many images, that many advertisements. I think about this, I'm gonna go off on a little tangent. I think about this, in my past videos, I've spoken about the, my compulsion with prawn. I'm not sure I can say the word on here or else the video will get pulled. But most of that was fed by imagery, right? An image got planted in my mind when I was a little girl on a computer, and it hooked me in such a way that I chased after that imagery and what I would see in sex scenes and movies. That's what formed a bit of my sexuality. So just thinking about what life would have been like without that, right? If people didn't have imagery to then try to mold into, and they just had their life experience and legends and heroes, and then you just like aspire towards that because their behavior was noble and virtuous. He said, vivid image came to overshadow pale reality, which is now what we hear with dopamine and scrolling, right? After so many people scroll so much, they go do something in their real life and it's boring. Like baking your own bread is boring. Like you don't get the same hit from it. We begin to be puzzled about what is really the original of an event. And then everybody goes rabbit holing, trying to figure out the truth and the details. And it's such a waste of time. And it keeps everybody in such a state of confusion, which then leaves you completely immobile to make actual changes, which is probably what they want. And I'm gonna say they, the evil people of the world. Who's they? Remember when you had all your friends when you were being called a conspiracy theorist after the scamdemic? Try to trap you into you feeling like you were crazy for noticing that things are really off in this world. So I wrote in the margin, pseudo-events, propaganda, and psychological operations. Triple P's. Pow. While a pseudo-event is an ambiguous truth, propaganda is an appealing falsehood. Pseudo-events thrive on our honest desire to be informed, to have all the facts, and even to have more facts than there really are. But propaganda feeds on our willingness to be inflamed. Pseudo-events appeal to our duty to be educated. Propaganda appeals to our desire to be aroused. And you see that, right? You see the people who follow all of the online pundits, the media personalities. You know, people like really feel like they know the facts after listening to that stuff. The American citizen thus lives in a world where fantasy is more real than reality, where the image has more dignity than its original. We hardly dare face our bewilderment because our ambitious experience is so pleasantly iridescent, and the solace of belief in contrived reality is so thoroughly real. We have become eager accessories to the great hoaxes of the age. These are the hoaxes we play on ourselves. So then I was thinking about it. I was like, you know, people who are addicted to being informed in the news, and they cannot go without trying to understand what's happening in the world. The public demand for news is a crying primal want of the mind. It's like a hunger of the body. The mania for news was a symptom of expectations enlarged far beyond the capacity of the natural world to satisfy, and it required a synthetic product. It really isn't natural for us to know so much, and you've heard this over, you know, the last 10 years. It is not good for us, and it is not natural to be knowing so much outside of our local environment, outside of our family, our friends who we can call and talk to. But since that has been created, now that they make us feel like we can know what's going on halfway across the world, they have to create a synthetic product and capitalize off that. Because down here on Earth, we like to profit on everything. So then he gets into celebrities, and it's so funny. So chapter 2 is from hero to celebrity. He calls celebrities the human pseudo-event. We kind of make celebrities our heroes. And of course, we do not like to believe that our admiration is focused on a largely synthetic product. And here's a new word I learned. Cynosure. It's kind of beautiful. It's from Latin cynosura, from Greek kunosura, dog's tail. It means a person or thing that is the center of attention or admiration. But that originally came from a star in the constellation Ursa Minor, the pole star, which was used by guides and navigators. So it was like the thing that would guide you. That is where we're at. People use celebrities as their guiding star. That needs to not be happening so much. We can make a celebrity, but we can never make a hero, because you know who makes heroes? God. Marketable human models, modern heroes, can be mass-produced to satisfy the market. The qualities which now commonly make a man or woman into a nationally advertised brand are in fact a new category of human emptiness. The vacuum of our experience is actually made emptier by our anxious straining with mechanical devices to fill it artificially. What is remarkable is not only that we manage to fill experience with so much emptiness, but that we manage to give the emptiness such appealing variety. And this is what I wanted to talk about in regards to heroes. In our world of big names, curiously, our true heroes tend to be anonymous. In this life of illusion and quasi-illusion, the person with solid virtues who can be admired for something more substantial than his well-knownness often proves to be the unsung hero. The teacher, the nurse, the mother, the honest cop, the hard worker at lonely, underpaid, unglamorous, unpublicized jobs. Topsy-turvily, these can remain heroes precisely because they remain unsung. Their virtues are not the product of our effort to fill our void. Their very anonymity protects them from the flashy, ephemeral celebrity life. I love that because I've just sensed that. I was listening to a podcast conversation, and someone was asking where all the role models were for young women. And my first thought was they're not online. The women who are really, really great role models are out in life doing the things that keep communities together. They're not necessarily trying to market their motherhood on Instagram and make money or be known. They're just doing the work of being a good human, even if no one sees it. So heroes are alive and well. They're just probably not on social media. And there's the chapter from Ideal to Image, the search for self-fulfilling prophecies, the difference between ideal thinking and image thinking. An ideal is what we actively strive toward, not what we fit into. He brings up the Barnum, the circus guy, the greatest showman. The Barnum's great discovery was not how easy it was to deceive the public, but rather how much the public enjoyed being deceived. That's dark. Here is something. Here's a new word too. I didn't know what verisimilitude was. All American citizen consumers are daily less interested in whether something is a fact than whether it is convenient and that it should be believed. What seems important is not the truth, but verisimilitude. And verisimilitude is the appearance or semblance of truth, genuineness, authenticity. Something as an assertion having merely the appearance of truth. So a fraud, a fake, a phony. In this new world where almost anything can be true, the socially rewarded art is that of making things seem true. It is the art not of discovery, but of invention. Finding a fact is easy. Making a fact believed is slightly more difficult. The greatest effort goes into the realization not of dreams, but of illusions. God makes our dreams come true. Skillful advertising men bring us our illusions, then make them seem true. Advertising got to be so popular precisely because it transports us to where the rigidities of the real world have dissolved. So escapism, because people can't really handle reality, and so, we have to create unrealities to live in. When truth has been displaced by believability as the test of the statements which dominate our lives, advertisers and newsmakers' ingenuity is devoted less to discovering facts than to inventing statements which can be made to seem true. With the apparatus of the graphic revolution, almost anything can be made to seem true, especially if we wish to believe it. That last part is very important, because if you want to believe something is true, that can keep you from actually being in touch with truth. Like, sometimes we block ourselves just because we want to believe that this world isn't as kind of wicked as it is. In America, we have gone one step beyond the homogenizing of experience. Not only do we begin to erase the distinctions of nature, our own distinctions become more impressive than nature's. Which is just so arrogant, right? That humans think that they can get rid of distinctions and just equalize everything, and think that that's better than the beautiful natural diversity that the world has, like inherent in it. But he said, one of the deepest and least remarked features of the age of contrivance is what I would call the mirror effect. Nearly everything we do to enlarge our world, to make life more interesting, more varied, more exciting, more vivid, more fabulous, more promising, in the long run, has an opposite effect. In the extravagance of our expectations and in our ever-increasing power, we transform elusive dreams into graspable images within which each of us can fit. And by doing so, we mark the boundaries of our world with a wall of mirrors. Our strenuous and elaborate efforts to enlarge experience have the unintended result of narrowing it. And in frenetic quest for the unexpected, we end by finding only the unexpectedness we have planned for ourselves. And this is what it all produces, if you work so hard to create this image of who you are and the type of life that you live. I don't know how much room there is for genuine surprises, like God's surprises, because it becomes this obsession with creating your own reality and control. And I did that for so long. I was that new age chick that was listening to Abraham Hicks every day and listening to all these channelers and doing the universal laws and all of that. And I just feel like humans are robbing themselves by getting so sucked into being obsessed with presenting an image of themselves in their life that they're robbing themselves of actual life, full of things that you would never be able to imagine for yourself. Our discontent begins by finding false villains whom we can accuse of deceiving us. Next, we find false heroes whom we expect to liberate us. The hardest, most discomfiting discovery is that each of us must emancipate himself. So it is about taking responsibility and not blaming anything or anybody, regardless of the evil. While we have given others great power to deceive us, to create pseudo-events, celebrities, and images, they could not have done so without our collaboration. And so this is why I hope there's a renaissance of people, the digital minimalism, the really, really being skeptical about the technology that's being ushered in for us to interact with. We must first awake before we can walk in the right direction. We must discover our illusions before we can even realize that we have been sleepwalking. And I'm gonna end that there. A lot of food for thought. All right, toodaloo!